I'm Sheila Acosta, so I am one of the in-house counsels for New World Title. Today we're going to be going over the new Fincen requirements, well, the changes to Fincen, and what everyone as a real estate professional should know going into transactions with the change that was just implemented on March 1st. So first off, what is Fincen? Fincen is the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. It's a bureau of the U.S. Treasury Department, and they're looking out for things like money laundering. They're trying to combat illegal activity and things like that. And they're trying to increase transparency in real estate transactions. So we here in South Florida have had a version of Fincen in place for 15, 20 years. As long as I've been practicing Fincen, we've had what's called GTOs, geographic targeting orders, that have gone into effect, and Miami-Dade and Broward have always been a part of that. So we've always, in some way, shape, or form, have had to report to Fincen as title companies. But what happened on March 1st was they broadened the scope of those. Instead of having these geographic targeting orders that were specific to certain counties, it's now a nationwide requirement to report these transactions, and they also removed the floor. So it used to be that any the transactions were if they were $300,000 or above. Now it's any transaction, which we'll go over in a second. So what's changing? This is now permanent. So the geographic targeting orders that I was just discussing used to be for 6 months, 9 months, a year, and then they changed them. For us in South Florida, they were pretty constant. We never got pulled out of there, but depending on the fraud and it was different states and different counties that would be affected. Now it's permanent and it's nationwide. And now it applies to all transactions, as I said, including, a $12,000 lot, a $100,000 apartment, whereas it used to be that we were looking at transactions only of $300,000 and above. Who does Fincen apply to? So Fincen applies to residential transactions, okay, 1 to 4 families, condos, co-ops, but also, which isn't on here, if there's a lot that someone's purchasing and they intend to build a residential property on it. So they intend to build a single family home, they intend to build a condo on it, that lot also falls under this Fincen requirement. So we at New World and Arise and Lifestyle, what we are erring on is erring on the side of over-reporting because the ramifications of not reporting are high. So if your client is buying a lot, but they won't certify, they can't say, no, I'm not going to be building a residential unit on this, and they refuse to sign the certification, we'll have to report to Fincen for that transaction.
Does this only include residential, or does it exclude commercial?
It does exclude commercial.
Okay.
Also, if these things only apply if the buyer or the person or the entity receiving the property is a legal entity. So if it's an individual, none of this applies. But if you have an LLC, a trust, a corporation, a partnership, a nonprofit, anything like that, that's the buyer, the entity receiving the property, then Fincen would apply. The reason behind this is at the end of the day, this requirement is to avoid money laundering. So if the property is in an individual's name, the government knows who submitted that money and who has ownership of this. But when it's an entity with all its, the possibilities of having different entities owning that entity or from different countries, they don't know who the beneficial owners are. And this is a way for the IRS to see who it is who actually owns and submitted the funds for this property. Also, go ahead. That quick claim deed would now be subject to Fincen. So you're going to see moving forward, it's not going to be that simple quick claim deed for a couple $100s or whatever, because whoever's preparing that quitclaim deed for you is now required to report it to Fincen. So that's why I was saying like entity receiving it, because it's not just buyers. This falls under too, let's say someone is refinancing a property, but they're refinancing into an LLC. If they're refinancing into the LLC, that transaction is subject to Fincen. Now, one thing that will exclude the property from this Fincen reporting is if they're financing the transaction with a traditional mortgage lender. So your Chases, your Wells Fargos, your UWMs, your big banks all have AML reporting. So they already report for anti-money laundering. So they do all this on their end. So we as a title company wouldn't have to report it because it's already being reported.
You're talking about UWM, but let's say the brokers for UWM, they're also compliant.
It wouldn't be the broker who complies, it would be the actual lender who's complying. So what we've been doing.
What about direct lenders?
It depends on each direct lender. So like most of the time, private money, hard money loans, they aren't required to report to anti-money laundering, the AML reporting. So if they don't report, we need to. So what we've been doing as New World, we actually have a list going where we're getting the certifications from each lender that we work with to confirm that they do in fact report to AML. You know, like I said, the Chases, the Wells Fargos, we don't really have to worry about, but your smaller banks, we are asking them if they report. We don't have to because it would be double reporting. But if they can't certify that they do, then we will. Sorry, that thing. So what is being reported? Basically, what's being reported is the entity details for the buyer entity or the receiving entity. So it'll be who is the beneficial owner, so meaning who has 20% or 25% ownership or more of that entity, or who manages that entity. Meaning, it could be that there are 4 owners, or let's say 6 owners, and they all have less than 25% interest. But there's also this manager who doesn't have an ownership interest. That manager, we would need their information as well, because they are the ones managing the entity, and therefore that's part of the reporting requirement. Government IDs, social security numbers, EINs for the company, the property details and closing dates, those things we supply. We are actually using a company called Fincen Real Estate Report to submit these reports for us for our transactions. So the way it's a pretty simple process in that we submit the information, the contact information for the buyers and sellers in the transaction, and they send a link to your client. Your client clicks into the link and we'll see all the information they need to fill in, and they can upload a picture of their ID, they can fill in all the details, and it'll tell them you're missing this or you're missing this. And then once they complete it, we get a notification that says complete, and we're clear to close on that. So this is all, what they're looking for is all information that's not on public record. I'm sure, as you guys know, you can go on Sunbiz and look at, who is listed on Sunbiz for an LLC or for a Florida corporation. But that's not necessarily the true owner of the company, because someone can be a manager of a company and not be the actual beneficial owner of the company. So Sunbiz isn't necessarily the information we need, which is why they're requesting it. And Florida, unlike other states, you have that information available, but there's a lot of other states that you can go onto their equivalent of Sunbiz, and that information isn't readily available. So it will be electronically signed, electronically submitted to Fincen, all through the portal. At least for us as New World, we're doing it through this real estate reports company. We've already had a few submissions through there, and all the clients say it's very simple, very easy to work with, and clear. You know, if your clients have any issues, they have actually a chat feature to be able to ask questions while they're doing it to the company that they're submitting to, or they can always call us and we can walk them through the process. But the information, it's extensive information because it's information that they normally don't have to submit, but it's simple enough. It's, names, addresses, identifying information for the beneficial owners.
I'm sorry, so does this apply to foreign nationals as well?
If it's a company.
Okay.
So remember, it's the end result is the buyer or the person receiving, the entity receiving the property is an entity. So if it's a foreign national buying in their individual name, no. But if it's a foreign national who owns, let's say, a Florida LLC, then yeah. And they're buying under the Florida LLC, they're the beneficial owner, they'd have to submit that information. So what is a beneficial owner? Is anyone who owns 25% or more of the entity, or anyone who has substantial control over that company. So as we were discussing, yeah, they could be, mom and dad actually own the company, but the son's the one who runs it. That means we're going to need the information for all three. The manager, the person who manages, has control over the company, and the two beneficial owners because they have 50% each. IDs are required. Personal identifying information is required, meaning if they're permanent residents or citizens of the United States, their social security number. If they're foreign nationals, the equivalent ID number of whatever company, of whatever country, or their passport information. What are exempt? I don't want to focus on this too much because at the end of the day, unfortunately, until we collect the information, we may not know that it's exempt. And you never want to get to the end of a transaction and then be delayed because the information hasn't been submitted. But if it's transfers due to death, divorce, bankruptcy. So basically, if a court is saying this needs to be transferred into this company, then Fincen wouldn't apply, right? Because the courts are ordering it so. Certain trust transfers. Basically, if you're, let's say I own a property in my personal name, and I'm going to transfer it into my named and dated trust. So the Sheila Acosta Revocable Trust dated March 12th, 2026, then Fincen wouldn't apply because I'm basically transferring from myself to myself, even though it's to a trust. And then transfers to a natural person. So if the buyer or the final final receiver is a person, none of this applies. At the end of the day, we're looking at entities. But as we always will confirm, we'll ask for the information, and then once we have the information, we can always say, hey, this is exempt because we've gotten title back and we can see that this is being transferred because of a court order, or it falls under the trust exchange. Who reports? There's a whole list of people who are required to report, right? And it goes like a waterfall. So if there's no settlement or closing agent, then it'll go to the preparer or the person recording, and it's like 8 different levels. If New World Lifestyle Rides is involved, we're the ones responsible for reporting, so we'll be taking care of that. But going back to your question about the quitclaim deed, even if it's not a part of a transaction, because of the broad scope of the way they wrote this, whoever prepares that quitclaim deed is responsible for reporting, or whoever records it. So the person who actually walks it into the county to record it is responsible for reporting to Fincen. So we don't file the report, or the company that we're using files the report, but we can't close a transaction unless we have that report completed. Because imagine trying to chase down a buyer after closing to get information. It's damn impossible, like damn near impossible to get that information, because especially if you're talking about foreign nationals or whatever, we won't be able to get that information, and then that causes a problem down the line. So we will not be closing any transaction that is subject to Fincen unless the reports are fully complete. And that's for both the buyer and the seller side.
What is normally the fee now? Was there a fee before, and what is the fee now normally?
There wasn't a fee before because the amount of transactions that were handled were significantly smaller, and actually our underwriter took care of reporting it for us, the fee now is $200. Okay, so you're going to see, actually, when you see pre-CDs, you may see Fincen reporting fee on the pre-CD. It's going to be on all of our CDs, and we'll remove it if it doesn't apply. The reason we have it on all our preliminaries is because if it's being disclosed to lenders, we want to make sure we over-report as opposed to under, and we can always remove the fee if it doesn't apply. How will this affect your closings? There's going to be more information that we're requiring from the buyers, right? There's also more submission required from the sellers if it applies. They need to be submitting like where the funds are coming from, things like that. The biggest thing is to have open communication with your buyers and your sellers, because they will have to submit about, hey, if there's an entity on the other end, like if the entity is the buyer, there's going to be all this information that we need to submit. And it's keeping that line of communication and keeping them knowledgeable of, hey, this is required. So we're not sitting the day before closing and being like, hey, we can't close tomorrow because your seller hasn't filled out the form or because your buyer hasn't filled out that form. Because that's the last thing we'd want. One thing to note, it used to be that, oh, I have a cash deal. It's the contract's under a person. And, the day before closing, they're like, I opened this LLC and I want to assign my contract to the LLC and buy under the LLC. I mean, we can still do that, but we won't be able to close until this is completed. So we actually just had that in one of our offices happen this week, where they got the addendum the day before closing. Hey, this is going to be an LLC now. So the manager had to send out an email. This is totally fine, but I'm sending you links to fill out this form. These forms need to be filled out before we can close. Okay. The buyer then called and said, forget it. I'm not going to do it. I'll take care of it later. We informed them, that's fine. You can do that, but this information is still going to be required later. Whoever prepares that quitclaim deed for you is going to have to fill out these forms. So if it's a matter of not filling out the forms, no, you're going to have to do it later anyway. So they were able to log in, and within an hour of, having that conversation, we were clear to close, and we were able to close on time anyway. So it's a matter of letting everyone know, hey, this is coming, be aware, be on the lookout for it.
So you said they logged in. So does it require the buyers to do some manual?
They'll get a link, at least from us. Every title company is going to handle it differently. We've seen when we're doing seller rep, we've actually seen people just send us the documents and then the client has to fill it out. But the client themselves, the buyers and the sellers, are the ones who have to fill it out and certify it. They have to sign, whether it's DocuSign or physically sign it, but they have to certify that that information is correct. So the way we're doing it is we have this company that sends a link. They click on the link, they log in. It'll already have their basic contact information because we input that. And then it'll tell them, okay, we need address, list all the beneficial owners, addresses for the beneficial owners, percentages, a bank account that they're using to send the money. So all that information gets input into their system. And then once it's fully complete, it'll tell them, okay, sign here. And they click and sign, and we get a notification saying it's complete. And then once we've closed, we can go in and actually file that document with Fincen, because it doesn't get filed until we've actually closed the transaction. So the biggest delay risk is that information. We need to make sure that the clients and everyone's aware, hey, this is necessary. Please log in. The company that we are using, they do call, they send emails, they send reminders. So if you are receiving an email from us, hey, we're a week out of closing and your client hasn't filled out this form, that's where we're going to need your involvement to push the client to, hey, this is important, because it's not something they've seen before. So I expect the pushback we're going to see is in the people who do lots of transactions, the investors who are used to just being able to, like, here's my information and move on. This is a change, especially if they're used to doing like quick cash deals. There's more information that they need to submit. These are the penalties that that will apply if things aren't submitted properly and are completed. So this is why we're not closing transactions without having the information completed, because willful violations could be up to $250,000.
So that's violations for the title companies.
Well, it's not just the title companies, because if you do a quitclaim deed, your client goes online, right? Fills out their quitclaim deed and then records it. Your client's responsible for submitting this. So that's why we've been trying to inform people like this closing, that they're like, we'll take care of it later. We're like, you can, but this is still going to apply, because if not, the fines will apply to them.
And how long does it take for them to, like sometimes the estoppel letter takes a long time. How long does this process take once they finish filling it out?
Once they finish filling it out, we can close immediately. Once we get our company will send us a clear to close as soon as they finish filling it out.
So once it's finished, you'll get back the results.
We get a notification that says this file's clear to close, meaning both the buyer and seller have filled out their side of the transaction. And then we go back in.
Best attorney in the biz. That's what I'm saying.
And then we get a notification. We will go back in and click on it saying this file closed, and they submit it to the Fincen website, and we get a certification. Within an hour of all that happening, it can be done.
Hey, Sheila, sorry to interrupt. I have a quick question. I put it in the chat, but with regards to the reporting, when it comes to the transitioning to the LLC or doing that quick claim or that assignment, can they not just do it after the closing to avoid the delay?
If they do it after the closing, whoever prepares that quick claim deed for them is still responsible for reporting. And if, quote unquote, no one prepares it, like they prepare it themselves, then whoever records that document is responsible for it. So at the end of the day, someone ends up being responsible for reporting this. It's mandatory. So they've made it pretty clear that there's no way out.
Okay, no, I was just mentioning from the sake of not delaying a closing. Like if one of the parties really needs to close and everybody wants to close.
As long as your client fills out the information, there shouldn't be a delay. We literally had a client fill it out we sent the link, and within an hour we had the notification saying it was complete. So it really is a matter of the client going in and putting in their details. There shouldn't be a delay as long as your client is responsive, right? And that's where it falls to, right? Because I know sometimes it's out of your hands. The client's like, I don't have to do that. I've done 10 closings this year and they've never asked me to do that. That's fine. This is new. I understand that, but it's required. So it's a matter of having that information in your grasp to be able to inform the clients of the change. And it's something that I'd be letting clients know, especially if you're representing buyers and they're investors, because most of the time investors are buying under an entity. It's something that they should be aware of, that this is going to be required. So if they have an entity that has multiple levels, where it's an LLC managed by another LLC managed by a partnership, they need to have all that information together to be able to submit that for Fincen.
Okay, thank you.
So the company we're using will be collecting your client's information for us, so their contact information through Closing Lock, and we'll get their phone numbers and email addresses from either Closing Lock or from yourselves, and then we'll submit it to Fincen Real Estate Reports, and they'll send the link. Like I said, it can be super fast. It's a matter of receiving that information. So if you can provide all your client's contact information in your emails when you submit the contract, we can get started on that right away if the contract has a buyer as an LLC. And what we've had all our managers do and all our staff, what we're trying to do is submit that from the beginning. And if it so happens that they're financed and the lender does do AML reporting, we can just cancel the report. But that way they have time to fill it out, as opposed to scrambling once we find out whether they're reporting to AML or not. So we would always prefer to have the information and not need to use it, than need the information and be scrambling at the end to get it. So, it's a lot of information. But the biggest thing is getting letting your clients know this is going to be required. Like I said, for the most part, it's well, in all cases, it's entities that are purchasing that are going to be affected. So it's letting your clients know, hey, you want to buy under this LLC, please note you're going to be receiving this, and being on top of them. Hey, did you fill out that form? I'm getting notifications you haven't, because you don't want to be that transaction that you're sitting the day of closing and being like, we can't close because we don't have this filled out.
With regards to, let's say, out-of-state buyers, does it apply nationally
It's
or?
nationwide.
Oh, nationwide, okay.
Yeah. This is nationwide. So we've had the benefit, if you could say it's a benefit, but we've been dealing with those GTO, the geographic targeting orders, for years. So we have an idea of how Fincen works. You have your other states who this is something completely new to them. And they're really scrambling to figure out how to inform their clients.
Why?
Well, because it's not something that they've ever dealt with before. We have to adjust the way we're looking at things and the way we target the transactions. Whereas these states never had to, this wasn't something in their pipeline to think about. We've always had to think about Fincen. It was just a matter of which transactions actually applied to it. Now it's more, obviously more transactions because there was a floor and now there isn't. And the quitclaim deeds are affected. So things like that adjust how we're thinking about it, but it's not a new process for us. A lot of states, it's completely new. They've never had to deal with this before.
I know how long, I'm gonna ask you more.
No, please. That's what,
So,
this is why I like the in-person.
yeah, I appreciate that. So, how soon, me as a buyer's agent, let's say, and I have an LLC, so for me, I would want to get in front of it as soon as possible instead of waiting until the last few days, correct?
Yeah. We are,
So the title company will do it, get on it right away when we give them the files, right?
correct. So we are trying to open the process with, sorry, that thing sprayed.
Yeah.
I ate it. We are trying to submit that to our company from the very beginning of the transaction. We don't want it to be that, oh, you have a day to submit it. But if we don't have your client's email and phone number, we can't get that over to them to be able to start the process. So what we need to start it with that company is emails, phone numbers, and names of the buyers and the sellers. And then EMD, so that's on the contract closing date, and property information, which we have already. So really it's contact information, getting us the contact information, and we can get that started right from the go.
I have a quick question.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yes, so if I recall correctly, I read something a couple of weeks ago about this, that the funds for the purchases would be sourced. Does that mean that buyers would need to submit bank statements like they would for a traditional purchase, such as FHA, VA, anything like that they're using funds, and it needs to be in their bank accounts for a certain amount of time?
Right. They won't have to source the funds, as in one of the line items on the documents that they're going to be filling out is the bank information for the bank account that they're submitting those funds from. But they won't have to submit actual bank statements. What they'll need to show is they're going to have to put the bank, like the bank's name, the routing number, and the account number that they're using to send the funds. And we will be reviewing that against where we receive the funds to confirm it's accurate before we submit it. But that's what they mean by sourcing funds. It's not the traditional sense of sourcing funds the way it is like with a traditional lender. They're not going to be reviewing months of bank statements to see how those funds got into that account. What they want to know is where the funds are coming into for the transaction, coming from for the transaction.
And obviously, it depends on the title company, but the title company is the one getting in front of this right away, not.
They should. We are. I can't speak for other ones, but they should. Yeah.
Don't start communicating with the buyers right away.
Correct. As soon as we have buyer contact information, we will submit it to our vendor, and our vendor has been set up to follow up daily. So if they don't receive, if they see that someone hasn't logged in, they'll send a reminder. If on the second day they haven't logged in, they'll call them. Hey, we sent you this email. Can you check your spam and make sure? If they've logged in but haven't filled it out, they'll send a reminder. And they'll continue to do that. And they actually have it set up when we log into the system, it's set up, okay, files that are 14 days and longer from closing, files that are 10 days or less from closing, files that are 7 days or less from closing, and then files that are cleared or closed. So it's all organized for us where we can look and say, hey, these files are less than 7 days from closing and the buyer hasn't submitted or the seller hasn't submitted the information. And then we can get involved and be like, hey, agent, I need you to call your client because these emails are sitting in their emails and these people have called and left messages and they're not answering. We need them to fill this out. But the vendor they're set up to automatically follow, and they're actually based here in South Florida. So they speak Spanish.
Quick question, sorry, I just came with me. Is this is something that's like now, it's not before like someone bought a property that they bought through an LLC?
It's as of March 1st.
Okay, after March 1st.
Yeah.
So it's not,
It would
Retroactive.
it's
Oh,
not retro.
retroactive.
It's not retroactive.
But I bought it in an LLC before.
No, it's not retroactive. It's moving forward. Anything purchased or transferred into an LLC as of March 1st.
Is there like a fee to do that now, or?
We're charging $200 for it.
How many money?
It's a lot of information.
Yeah.
Then it's a
Sheila,
lot more work we need to do on
I
our
have a
end.
question, Sheila.
Yes, ma'am.
They updated, I know in South Florida, don't know about the other states, they updated the the sales contract with the new verbiage for
Wendy?
this. Huh?
Is this Wendy? Oh, no.
No,
I'm
this is
sorry.
Lisette.
Hi, Lisette.
Hi.
Go ahead.
So they updated the contract recently on the as is. So that's the way we can explain it to our buyers. Would you be able to give us like a short version without us practicing law, how we can direct them there and say this is why it has to be done?
I mean, you can direct them to the contract and tell them, the Fincen rules changed as of March 1st, 2026. And so now the scope of transactions that fall under it are broader. So if you are representing the buyer and your buyer is purchasing under an LLC or an entity or a corporation or anything like that, I would from the get be letting them know this is going to apply to you. So you're going to have to provide more information.
It's a one-time thing, right? Just once they buy, that's it, one time.
Once they buy or receive the property, correct? Yes.
Okay, one-time fee of 200.
Yeah, it's at closing. We collect it at closing. Yeah.
But it has to report every year, it's just like a
No. We report it at closing.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine. So yeah, that's how I would approach my clients. And in listing presentations, I mean, it's something to discuss, not necessarily, you don't need to harp on it unless you're presenting an offer where you see it's an LLC, right? If you receive an offer and the purchaser is an LLC, then I would discuss it with the seller. By the way, this is the buyer on this transaction, like for this contract, is an entity. We're going to have to submit Fincen forms. It's an additional step. It's not a big deal. It's just an additional step, especially on the seller side. It's the same information they're submitting to us as the title company. They just have to submit it in a different form. That's all.
So, and I'm just curious, but will that prevent a closing from happening?
If they don't give us the information, absolutely.
Okay.
Because we're not going to sit there and take the hit.
Got it. Okay. No, we have one.
Yes, under 100 now.
Oh, okay.
Ours, like, it's an investment, so they're a condo hotel. So they're buying.
But it's commercial.
No, residential.
No,
Residential?
Yeah.
Then this will apply. Because I'm assuming the buyer's an entity.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, this will absolutely apply.
Even if it's like the same LLC, right? And there's two managers or they both.
Stop it. It's an LLC.
Okay.
That's it. LLC, corporation, trust, partnership, anything that is not an individual name. So as if it's not your client's name, period, then it applies. So any entity handling the transaction.
And that's for not only South Florida, that's for like
Nationwide. Yeah, as of March 1st, it's now nationwide. Yeah, yeah. Maryland, Texas, California, everywhere. Any other questions?
Diego, what's Fincen?
What's what?
No, he has, but that's really great information because now we know how to rush people to do this. instead of-
Yeah, it's a matter, and it's like I said, it's not hard information to provide. The biggest barrier is going to be those clients who are like, I've done this 100 times and I've never had to submit this. So that's getting ahead of getting ahead of them. Right? Hey, I know you're an investor and you've done this a lot. Are you aware that this changed? Once they've done a couple of transactions after March, it's not going to be a problem anymore, right? Because they're used to it. But before that, like right now that we're at the beginning stages of this, you're going to have that situation occur a lot where people are going to be like, but I've purchased dozens of properties under my LLC and they've never asked for this. Well, that's because this just changed. Shay, anything to add?
No, I think the only question is like, so as an agent, we're gonna get a question like, what is Fincen? How do I explain that to them without?
Diego,
Fincen is it's an anti-money laundering like targeting basically. It's a reporting requirement to avoid money laundering. So the way they're avoiding the money laundering is by having those entities report who their beneficial owners are and where the funds are coming from.
Do I have to use that term? Because I feel like that's scared a lot.
That's exactly what it is. Like you can avoid the term, I guess, by saying, it's a new requirement to disclose the beneficial owners of entities. But when they ask you why,
If you say money laundering, it pretty much gets to the point.
that's the reasoning behind is for anti-money. Correct. Correct. If it's an individual, this doesn't apply because the reasoning behind it is they're trying to figure out who the actual owners are, right? Who's behind it. So if you own the property in your name, I just have to look up the property and I can see your name. But if I look up the property and it's ABC LLC, I don't know who really owns that or where that money came from. So yeah, if they're an investor and they purchase individually, not a problem. It's rare that you come across an investor. Yeah. Correct. You know who's responsible because their name's on it.
Awesome.
Questions? No? No, this won't affect taxes because at the end of the day, I mean, they should be reporting their taxes, right? This isn't an IRS, this isn't like a 1099 where we're submitting or anything like that. This is, if you remember last year, I believe it was beginning of last year, they had like changed it that if you have an LLC, you have to then like log in and do a BFO reporting, like a beneficial owner. It's the same thing. You're reporting who the owners are. But you're not even you're putting the bank account where it's coming from so they can trace it. But at the end of the day, we're the ones reporting the transaction with a 1099 to the IRS. So it won't affect their taxes in any way, shape, or form. What it is, it's just providing more information to the government. Any other questions? Okay. All right, I'm gonna log off. If you guys have any questions, you know where to find me, and also you have Shay and Gladys as a great contact. I'll see you guys soon. Bye.
Thanks.